Welcome to the Legislators Lounge. This is our first episode of a series of television broadcasts that we hope to do that'll bring the issues that face New Hampshire to the people. And I'm Jim Webb, and my co-host is Brian Chirichiello. And today's episode is focusing on gambling and casinos in New Hampshire. And this is an open forum, so it's going to be just jump right in if you want to say anything. And our guests for today's show are Senator Lou D'Alessandro from Manchester. We have Senator Jim Rausch from Derry, and Senator Chuck Morse from Salem. Welcome, Senators.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Great. So let's talk about the bill. And the reason why we're here is SB 152.
Right.
And even though this has been taped, the Senate actually met yesterday. And if you want to tell us a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Senate met yesterday in session, and we passed Senate Bill 152. We're all co-sponsors of Senate Bill 152. It's a piece of legislation that allows for one destination casino. There's an open bidding process for that casino. Has a license fee of $80 million. And we think it's a good thing for New Hampshire. It's a process really that's gone on for decades, to be quite honest with you, a process that began 15 years ago when Arthur Clem and I were in the Senate, and we passed a piece of legislation that's similar to this. Passed it 15 years ago in the Senate, wasn't accepted by the House. The Speaker of the House said that she would not accept it because of the fact that they had turned down the subject matter in a previous session. And as a result of that, the battle went on and has gone on really for the last decade. It's amazing that the day the Senate passed it was to the day 50 years ago when the House passed the lottery bill. Kind of an ironic situation that develops when you think of it, the same day, and you get passage of a bill that's analogous to it in many ways.
And the vote was a great vote. It was 16-8, bipartisan. And I think all of us here that were involved with the legislation are extremely excited about that. And it certainly was a multi-pronged effort. I think Senator D'Alessandro has worked on this for many, many years, as has Senator Morse. I've always supported gaming, but my involvement this year was to help with one specific component, and that was to make sure that our charities were held harmless. And maybe as we go further along, I'll go more into detail. But that's kind of, it really was very gratifying to participate in this process for me.
Senator Morse?
Yeah, I think it was a good week. I mean, we had a non-binding vote in Salem where over 80% of the citizens supported gaming, and we had a strong vote in the Senate. So I think things have changed. I mean, as this moves on to the House of Representatives, I think it's become obvious what's going on in Massachusetts. I think that in the legislature, they're realizing that we're going to lose revenues if we don't move forward here, and things are changing. So I think the debate in the House is going to be a good one.
Great, great. And talking about Salem, I grew up in Salem, but Salem's always been open to bringing casino gambling in, as far as I've known.
We've never had an 81% vote in Salem.
That's just incredible.
I think the people, really want to see it happen in the state of New Hampshire. They know it's going to be a challenge. I mean, there's probably 3 other communities that are going to try and get this, but that's the process that we put in place. I think it's open and it's going to be a good process, but Salem's shown a sign that they want it. So.
Right. And were there studies that showed that a casino in the southern portion of the state would probably bring in the most revenues? Is that correct?
Well, we've had a series of studies over the years that clearly indicate that the southern tier of New Hampshire, which has been a destination, again, Rockingham Park has had thoroughbred racing for 100 years. So you've had a situation where it's been a destination location. We have excellent access and egress to the southern tier. And many studies have indicated that the demographics clearly indicate that if you're going to put something in New Hampshire, southern New Hampshire presents the best opportunity. And as Senator Morse pointed out, there are a number of entities that are going to be alive and well and looking for this license. And And I think the southern tier obviously is where it's going to be, but we think that we're going to get 4 or 5 different entities that will be looking to get this license. It's a very attractive situation, And as I say, southern New Hampshire has excellent access and egress, and those are very strong points in our favor.
Right, absolutely.
And I think being the senator representing this Derry community, and this being a Derry cable TV, I think it's real important for the citizens of Derry to know that as chairman of transportation, I've worked really hard to make sure that Exit 4A is included in the 10-year highway plan, be paid for with federal money, but we still need to get I-93 done between Exit 3 and Manchester. To do that, in the past 10-year plan, I put in provisions that gave us the authorization to bond $250 million, which will complete the project, including 2A, but we need a revenue source. And for the last 2.5 years, I have made it very clear that that revenue source was going to be from the expansion of gaming in the state at a location. And that's exactly what this piece of legislation does. 45% of the net machine income will go for our highways to pay for the bond to do 93 for betterment and state aid bridge. So I'm very, very hopeful that our representatives here in Derry will support this. I also want to point out that in this legislation, 1% of the revenue will go to abutting communities, and Derry is an abutting community, and that'll give us about $1 million in tax relief. So not only do we get tax relief, but we will get Exit 4A and we will get I-93 completed. So this is really, in my opinion, a very, very critical entity for our community, and I just hope that our state representatives will be very, very supportive of Senate Bill 152 when it comes before you in the House.
I think, as Senator Rausch points out, this is an economic recovery job creation package, and I think Senator Morse, in developing his portion of the bill, and he spent a lot of time on it, looked at infrastructure, roads, bridges, the highway, 93, the gateway to New Hampshire, and the gateway provides economic opportunity and economic development. 4A, significant access point. The highway, significant access point. The development of that area creates a number of jobs, creates a number of opportunities for companies to come to New Hampshire, and the entity itself will produce a number of jobs. So in terms of private investment, which we encourage, I think private investment has always been part and parcel of the deal. We want private entities to come to New Hampshire. This bill calls for the private investment of $425 million over a 5-year period. That's very significant in terms of creating jobs for plumbers, bricklayers, electricians, masons. These jobs are difficult to come by in this economy. This will provide an opportunity for these jobs to develop. And on the other side, we'll create some full-time jobs they'll be decent jobs, good paying jobs with good benefits, and that's a key.
Yeah, and speaking about jobs, what was it? I think I read it was like 2,100 jobs, construction jobs, and
right.
Then once it's built, the casino's built, we're talking about maybe 1,500 gaming jobs.
That's a considerable number of jobs.
Yeah, I mean, the way this was designed, and you know, this isn't something we just thought about yesterday. I mean, obviously, like Lou said, we've been working on it for 15 years, but, you know, Senator Rausch, when he developed the 10-year highway plan, that bond's sitting in the 10-year highway plan, looking for a funding source. We had 2 choices for the funding source. We were basically, the federal government could have upped what we got. They went up $3 million, I believe, in the last funding. We needed them to go up 20. So that didn't happen, and the next source that we all talked about was to do it out of the gaming. You know, you got the jobs that are going to be created out of that $250 million bond for the highway system. Right. You got the jobs at Exit 1 that'll happen because of building the casino, and we hope private development starts when I-93 gets built. I mean, that was the goal here, was get the government out of it. You know, we think we're creating a sustainable income source here that can get New Hampshire through these tough times and grow New Hampshire. And I think it's there. I think we just need the opportunity to debate it with the representatives, and I think the public will understand that. You know, Jim talked about betterment, but, you know, Derry, if Salem were to be the community, Derry's in a butter. They get $1 million, a little bit more from being in a butter. They get the benefit of I-93 being built. And on top of that, we tried to, which we worked on this summer, we tried to double the betterment accounts. One's the bridge account. We basically wanted to take it from almost $7 million to $14 million. And then we wanted on our local roads that the communities could get the money directly and not go into our department. You know, of transportation, come directly to you. We tried to double that amount of money as part of this bill. So it's very aggressive in the sense that we want to get jobs happening in the state of New Hampshire, and we want to do it better than Massachusetts. We want to get this up and running now.
Right, right.
Well, I have a question for you, Senators. In the previous bills that came before us last year in particular, we had a casino bill that came in front of the House, and I believe it died in the House. But it was, I think the thing that held that one up was the bidding process for the license. I know this bill is 17 pages or so long, right? And the license is like of $80 million or something to that effect. But is there going to be an open bidding process, or is there going to be that they strictly come out and pay the $80 million if they want it?
Well, it's always been an open, all of the bills that we have presented have been an open bidding process. Remember, when we started this 15 years ago, we had a little different scenario that was in place. But since time has passed, the open bidding process is the key element. And people will make presentations to the Lottery Commission, and these presentations will present an opportunity for an entity to come here. This is what we want to do. This is where we want to build it. And these are the elements that we're bringing to the table. Another will bring the same activity, and there will be a competition, and that competition will be decided on by the Lottery Commission. So it's an open concept, and you know that in the beginning, one of the criticisms of this piece of legislation, way back 15 years ago, was the fact that we designated to racing, because racing was an operative at the time, and sustaining racing was an element that was very important to Senator Clement and to myself. Well, that has disappeared. That no longer exists, and so you have to change with the times. And I think we have done that. And as I said, the key elements in this bill differ from the elements of the past, and the economic recovery job creation package. Again, the road, the infrastructure, the North Country, education, all have become a preeminent part of this piece of legislation. And when you look at it, a sustainable revenue source is important for the state of New Hampshire. Jobs are important for the state of New Hampshire. The construction of I-93, or the widening of I-93, you know, an element that began, how many years ago at a cost of $200 million. Now it's
in the 80s, though.
and now it's almost up to $1 billion. So you see what's happened over the passage of time, and the fact that in many ways we've neglected to do the job. This is an opportunity to get it done, and there's good bipartisan support for this. And as we have pointed out, the House has to make that key decision. It's over in the House. It'll be over in the House, and the House has to decide, you know, in a non-tax fashion, where the individual is not taxed, can this revenue source be acceptable to the House? The sustainability of this revenue source has been proven consistently over the years. So sustainability shouldn't be a question. The charities, which Jim worked on, the charities, a key element to this because of the fact that charities thought that they were going to be left out. The roads, bridges, infrastructure that Senator Morse worked on, Chuck Morse worked on. I mean, all of these components create a package that provides economic opportunity for a wide variety of items. It doesn't just constrict it to one area. Everybody benefits from this package. people in the state of New Hampshire benefit from this package, and the North Country benefits from the package. So in essence, when you try to put something together that everybody gets a piece of the action on, you know, there will be the detractors here, and you try to mitigate them over here. But the battle will be in the House of Representatives. Both of you are members of the House.
Right.
You've got to think about this and think about the positive aspects of this, not only for today, but for the future. I mean, the future of New Hampshire depends upon economic prosperity. And economic development is such a vital component of this piece of legislation.
And one of the things that I feel very, very comfortable is over the course of the past election, I served 3 communities, Windham, Derry, and Hampstead. I was very, very public about my support of gaming. And when you talk about finishing I-93, it was abundantly clear. You as state representatives are debating a gas tax. Well, in my campaigning, the attendees to my events made it perfectly clear to me they would much rather see gaming than a gas tax. So I am extremely comfortable with utilizing the gaming money to finish I-93. So a gas tax vote for me is contrary to what my constituents have made it abundantly clear that they want, and that's gaming.
Right. And do we have 2 options, Senator Rausch? Do we have basically 2 options, the gas tax to finish 93 or the casino bill? Is that what we're looking at the state?
Well, as Senator Morse said, we had hoped for a 3rd option, and that would have been increased federal funding. But I think everyone is aware of the problems they have in Washington, D.C. That hope will not come to fruition. We will not be getting additional federal money. We're grateful we're at least receiving what we had received, but to finish I-93, we will have to find a solution for that.
Yeah, and I don't see it as 2 options, because I think Senator D'Alessandro made it clear. Gaming is non-tax dollars. You know, we can't go anywhere as representatives in this state and not hear from people that they're having difficulty putting food on the table.
Right.
I mean, so the reality is, on the gaming issue, we're going to be basically taking $75 to $80 million that's leaving New Hampshire now and bringing it back. On top of that, we do this best. We're exporting the revenue from this. We're going to get it from Massachusetts, you know, if we can get this up and built. You know, I'd like to go back to how strict the legislation is. When we worked with the governor on this, and Lou and I had several meetings with her, you know, it's one casino. That she made that clear that that's what she would support in the state of New Hampshire. On top of that, you know, if 4 organizations come in and bid, in the host community that they're looking to build in, there has to be, as part of the application, there has to be a local vote paid for by the group that wants to build there. So they have to pay before their application's complete. They have to pay $500,000 for one review from lottery. They have to pay another $100,000 to get reviewed by our Attorney General. Right. And if it's not enough, the legislation is so strong, it makes them pay more, so that we can make sure this is going to work for New Hampshire. Then they have to go through a process where, if it's 4 of them, that they all have to meet at lottery and present their plans. So this isn't a cakewalk for any community. The governor wanted the legislation to be strict. I mean, heck, we got 13 state troopers going inside that one building as part of this legislation. This is a real tough thing to do. We don't want it to go wrong in New Hampshire. We've developed a piece of legislation that I think is pretty strict, and we're looking forward to support from the House.
Right.
Well, many people like myself believe that if we don't build a casino or don't do gaming here in New Hampshire, then our people are just going to go to Massachusetts anyway, and that's lost revenue that we could have.
So I don't think there's any question about that. I mean, we've already seen loss of revenue in the North Country from the casino that's operating in Maine. Our lottery sales are down, what, 10 or 15% in the North Country, in the 2 northern counties. So we know now that a significant amount of money goes to Connecticut and goes to Rhode Island, New Hampshire people on their buses traveling out of state. And think about the loss of additional. We talk about Massachusetts coming into play, the loss of between $50 and $70 million. That's significant. That's a very significant loss, and this abates that. This mitigates that. And when we talk about safety and security, which is a key element, I read an excerpt from Mr. Powers, who was the first executive director of the lottery. Do you remember Mr. Powers was the FBI agent who broke the Brinks case? He talked about security and running the lottery well. And think of the states that have emulated us in terms of the lottery. I think, 35, 36 states have followed New Hampshire once we were the first state in the United States to put the lottery together. So when we talk about security, we talk about oversight by the state police, we talk about oversight by the Lottery Commission. These are very significant components, very significant components. And we've had the opportunity to look at the 35, 36 states that have already done this.
Right.
So we have examples to go by. We have the pluses and we have the minuses. And always good, historians say always look at the past, because in looking at the past you can predict the future.
And we already know the loss of New Hampshire dollars to Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun. I mean, that's I think a known entity at this point. We know that we have senior citizens in almost every community that they take a bus and go down there and enjoy a day activity. That's New Hampshire dollars going out of state. And if, in fact, we get 3 casinos in Massachusetts, that will just be an increase in the loss of New Hampshire dollars. Well, I just don't think it's necessary. I think the citizens have made it pretty clear that the casino effort here is one that they feel is warranted and fits into the lifestyle of our citizens.
And let's talk about the abutting towns and the percentages they would actually receive. Is it 1% of the revenues coming in? Is that projected to be roughly between $100 million, $130 million?
Well, basically the total revenue is about $130 million. That came from our lottery commission. That's not some outside group coming into New Hampshire and telling us what we're going to raise from it. With Massachusetts going up, that's what we think we can do here in the southern tier.
Right.
I mean, that's obviously where they've said it would be the most beneficial. 1% of the revenue that you're talking about would be somewhere between $4.5 and $5 million. That would be split between, let's say Salem was the host community.
Right.
The abutting towns would be Atkinson, Derry, Windham, and Pelham. They would split that money at the communities that surround Salem. So that, but I think the bigger benefits in this are I-93 getting built.
Right.
And I think the betterment to our communities and roads continuous. Those are benefits that you can count on. I mean, the downside of this is very obvious. Massachusetts goes up, they get everything going, we lose the revenues and we gain all the expenses. If you even believe that there's going to be expenses with gambling addiction, New Hampshire today has no way to deal with that in their budget. In this budget with gaming in it, we not only put $4.5–5 million, that money can get matched federally. There's so many positives that are part of this, and I just like to, you touched on thoroughbreds. I want to touch on it. My daughter came home from school. Her teacher said, God, I saw your father. He's trying to support gaming. You got to tell him, I want thoroughbreds up there. Right. There are so many people that live in this area with the farms that used to be here, right. And don't tell me the people in the southern tier didn't love the farmland down here. It just got so valuable. The reality is we'd love to see that come back.
Right. Well, the preservation of open space is another component of this situation, because if indeed thoroughbred racing were to return to an entity, think of what's needed to support that: the farms, the breeding activities, and the kind of economic benefit that creates. And wouldn't it be wonderful to see the preservation of that open space? Because it's truly New Hampshire, and it is what New Hampshire was. And although you can't restore, you can certainly prevent that open space from disappearing. Again, it's a key element. To
I
this
think
piece
that's
of
an
legislation.
exciting part. We might lose a senator. He might become a
Well,
vet again.
I was just going to say, let's not forget that I'm a veterinarian, and even though I don't practice large animal, I love my profession, and I have some dear colleagues who would love to be practicing large animal in southern New Hampshire. So for me, this is a win-win. Not only do I get 93, but I might, maybe I'll have to go back and start practicing. Who knows?
It's an economic opportunity.
There we go. Certainly better than $100 a year.
So I guess Millennium, I was watching a TV program, and they actually had, I think that's the way to pronounce it, is it Millennium? The company that was looking to do the racetrack down there. They had mentioned they would keep the track, the oval track at Salem, if they were to go in, and I thought that was kind of a good idea.
Well, what Millennium has done is they showed you a project that they did just outside of Pittsburgh called the Meadows,
right,
where they restored thoroughbred racing and upgraded thoroughbred racing. So I believe that that's part of their presentation, that they've talked about restoring thoroughbred racing.
I talked to Senator Clem last night at a meeting I was at, and he said that the intention is to bring thoroughbreds back.
Right.
And I think that's just a byproduct of this. That's just positive. I mean, you drive by Rockingham Park. You came from Salem, Brian. It used to be the thriving place. I mean, you could go there in the morning and watch the horses warm up. You could go on Thursday nights and watch the boxing matches, at the barns. I mean, it was part of Salem that I think people just want to see come back. I mean, there are a lot of people that have lived in Salem for a long time that came out and voted the other day, and they're excited about it. So
right,
I think it could be great.
Do we still have some time?
Oh, yeah.
Then I guess before we run out of time, I just want to make sure that I assure our charities. I think here, we support the charity gaming. And one of the things I worked on, and I sent out a letter to the charities to let them know that they are held harmless. If they are participating in gaming, in 2012, where we have an accounting reference point, whatever their base number is, they will be held harmless. If they receive less money after the casino is in place and operating, the casino operator will refund or reimburse each charity so that they do not lose any revenue. Now, that doesn't happen when the 3 casinos open in Massachusetts. If we don't have something here and citizens leave our state and those charities lose money, they lose money.
Right.
But this piece of legislation holds them harmless. We're doing everything we can to make sure that those charities who are doing good deeds that we certainly support will at least receive what they had been receiving. So the legislation, I think, is perfectly clear on that. There have been some entities who are trying to, I guess, mislead the charities, but the legislation, I believe, is crystal clear that they will be held harmless so that they can continue to do the good deeds that they are already doing.
Right. I did get an email from the upper room asking that particular question, whether that was going to hurt them.
One of the ones that participates, and they are one of the ones that they will be held harmless.
Right. So it's good to know that it doesn't affect them at all, or the monies that they raise for their good deeds in the town.
On their base year, they'll continue to receive that at a minimum.
Right. Let's talk about the North Country real quick. I know there's a piece that helps the North Country out.
Well,
is that done through the Coos County?
It's done through the tax. You have the money's given to the Department of Resources and Economic Development. There's a group within the entity made up of people from the North Country, and they will decide what happens. Now, remember, the North Country has suffered dramatically. Right. Think of North Stratford, where the Ethan Allen plant has closed. People who had worked all of their lives out of work, without anything. In Berlin, the paper industry is gone. If it hadn't been for the resurrection of the plant in Gorham, very, very difficult there. Groveton, the Groveton paper, gone, entirely gone. So economic development is a key element. It's a key element in this package. As I said, you know, economic development, job creation is the motivation, and getting some money up to the North Country so that we can explore investment. We can explore bringing things back is a key ingredient. The North Country is part of New Hampshire.
Right.
This bill effectively takes care of all of New Hampshire. It's all encompassing, and I think that's the purpose. The purpose was to make New Hampshire a better place, to create a revenue source that was non-taxable, non-tax, and to, as I said, to provide economic opportunity.
Yeah, I think, you know, Lou and I have both chaired budgets in the Senate, and the reality is it's tough right now. I mean, this last budget that we built was real tough. We left 3 things unfunded. One was the university system. The other was the solution for funding I-93, and then we have this uncompensated care at our hospitals, which I'm sure as reps you hear from your local hospital. Right. So what this legislation, this wasn't supposed to solve the world's problems. I mean, trust me, I don't believe in that, but this is a sustainable income that will help the problem with the university system, and it can help it in 14 and 15 with the not the application fee, but the licensing fee. And 16, 17, 18, when it's up and running, it'll work with the university system, and then it'll fund the highway that we want to put the bond out there to work today. We want that bond going now. So, you know, that was a big part of it. Along with that, we worked with the governor, and we wanted to make sure the North Country, you know, the North Country is great. Just get us the communications, get us the roads, and we'll take care of ourselves. Right. That's all they said to us. I mean, this legislation will produce about $10 million in the beginning to start to work on bringing communications to the North Country, if that's what that committee decides. Right. I mean, ultimately, the governor will have the choice how that money gets applied in the North Country, but she wanted to make sure that that was going to happen for them. I think it was well thought out. You know, we're not talking about 4 racetracks getting casinos these days. Those are all over. This is a real strict, tight bill that's going to solve problems that we need to solve. If you can't solve it with this, what I've said to the Senate, and I said yesterday, tell me what you want me to do. Tell me how you want to fund those issues, because they're real and they need to be funded. But when we go to build the budget, you know, without this revenue source, we're going to have to make some serious cuts. And I think I'm pretty conservative, and we rank things in the order we think they need to be funded. But there's a lot of people that are talking to us about making sure that New Hampshire sends a message to everyone that we believe in our university system. And I don't see another funding source, quite honestly. Right. That's not a tax.
I was at a meeting last night, and maybe Senator Morse, as Chairman of Finance, will explain it, but there was confusion between how I was explaining the revenue from the casino once it is functioning, which would be not this biennium but the next biennium, and the license fee. And right now, House Finance is grappling with the license fee, but Senator Morse, if you would explain how you plan on dealing with that in the Senate.
I think the Senate's made it clear. Our bill needs to pass in order for the licensing fee to go into the budget. Senate Bill 152 needs to pass. We've passed it in the Senate. We're looking for the House to pass it, and obviously the governor supports it. What that will do is the licensing fee, we want to bring it in 2014, and we want to take that licensing fee and use most of that money for the university system. The governor used about $65 million. The rest of it she used for mental health, the other $15 million. And as you know, in Derry, I mean, you have CLM here. Right. You know, there's a need there. And the reality of the whole thing was the licensing fee was up to about $30 million. I mean, we used to put that fee out there at $50 million right. when Lou first wrote this, and we've upped it to $80 million. That could be done with the process that we're putting in place. You could make that happen. The revenue from the casino operating is not in this budget. That's not what's being talked about. Just the licensing fee is being talked about in this budget, and we can make that happen. The revenue, that lottery's done all the analysis on that, and that's another whole show.
Right,
So-
right. And that actually takes an effect. I mean, if everything passes, I read 2016 would be the quickest they could get it up and running, and
The
then we
next
get that
biennium.
revenue stream from that point
Right,
on.
the next biennium.
And I would like to explain that that works out perfect with the bonding situation, because right now we issued bonds to complete the highway to exit 3, which will be done in the fall of 2015. And how, because we've already got the authorization and how the treasurer's office works, there is always a float of at least 50 million that, so as long as the casino was operating in 2016, the timing is perfect.
Right.
For the bonding of the 250 million, there would be no, basically, they don't have to take their equipment out of the highway structure because the money would be there and available with the way we do bonds in this state. So it works out perfect with the timing. And right now, if we get it passed, it'll be a very beneficial to our state.
Right. Speaking about bonding, the interest rates are probably the lowest we've seen in a long time.
1.27% is what we bonded the money to finish the highway to exit 3. 1.27.
So do you think he studies those numbers?
Yeah. I mean, and what is that? Is that spread out over 10, 15, 20, 30
Well, the
years?
treasurer actually is very brilliant. Some of those bonds are going to be paid out in 7 years because she actually got a better rate, and the 1.27 is an average of it, but some of them are being paid off even sooner, but the average is 1.27.
As Jim says, the treasurer works it out well. New Hampshire accelerates payments of bonds, which is a key element. That's why our bonds are so attractive in the open market, the accelerated nature of our payments. We pay 75% up front. That's why the tail end is de minimis.
Right.
Well, Senators, we know all the positive things of bringing these casinos to New Hampshire. We've heard some of the negative things that I've heard of, people being addicted to gambling, the crime in and around the casino, that sort of thing. What do you guys have to say about that?
Well, you'll always hear negatives because that's the nature of the beast. I think they're overemphasized. The fact of the matter is that studies have been done with regard to this, and the crime element does not increase dramatically. If you have good supervision and good oversight, that doesn't happen. The social amenities, the social negatives, they're here now. And what we do is we provide money to abate those and to treat those, which I think is the key element that people forget. They talk about all of these social elements. Well, if you don't do it, I mean, the society itself creates the social problems. Those are here. What we provide is something to take care of those problems. And again, there are studies that will indicate those social problems are here. There are other studies that say they're not. I think you have to look at that carefully and examine it. Are there going to be problems? Absolutely. We have problems in this life. Those problems are here today, and as I say, we don't treat them very well. This creates an opportunity to take care of those situations. Excuse me. Go ahead.
I guess I'd like to say to all my colleagues, but in particular my Republican colleagues, who the status has always been individual responsibility. So we live in a state where you can drive a motorcycle with no helmet because it's in your individual responsibility.
Right.
Drive a car with no seatbelt because it's your individual responsibility. You can stop on I-93 and buy alcohol because it's your individual responsibility. So where is individual responsibility when it comes to I want to go to I go only for the entertainment component. I'm not a gambler. Why should I be deprived of my ability to go for entertainment because somebody else who has an individual responsibility to behave properly, why do I lose my right because of them? And That's how New Hampshire's operated. We operate on individual responsibility. Why is it okay for all these other issues, but not for gaming? And by the way, you can play craps, poker, roulette, blackjack, if it's for charity.
Right.
Well, I'd like to chime in on that one a little bit. This particular bill, if it gets passed and we build a casino, there'll be money there for these people. If we don't, these people are still going to get on buses and drive to Massachusetts, and we still have the problem. So
Exactly.
the bill actually is a better scenario for those naysayers as far as that goes.
You're providing dollars to take care of those problems, to address those problems, which has never been done in the past. And I think it's a primary concern to all of us that be an integral part of the process. And we designate 1% in order to do that to Health and Human Services. And I was at a meeting this morning at a local hospital, and what do you think the big complaint was? People with problems coming to the emergency room and they can't be taken care of. Right. Social ills, and I think the emergency rooms around the state are now crowded. Well, we help to offset that with these monies.
Well, the same people are working on those issues too.
Right.
I mean, the same group's working on uncompensated care at our hospitals. Right. So, I mean, we care about the whole state. You know, I on this issue, though, that you brought up, I served on the Center for Public Policy when I wasn't in the Senate. I think they've grossly overestimated, you know, the social issues here. And you hit the nail on the head. If we do nothing in New Hampshire and let Massachusetts move forward, if there are any social issues, and if they exist today, there's nothing to help solve it. This bill actually thought about that. Lou thought about it a long time ago. I mean, the reality was we knew that we had to move forward with something in that department to help with it. I just don't believe after Millennium's been up here, you know, and the people from Pennsylvania have come up here and spoke to us. You know, we've had our own state troopers driving everyone crazy in this country. Our colonels called many a state and talked to them about the issues that we hear. And it's just, they do not see it, whether he's calling Connecticut or Rhode Island or Pennsylvania. It's just not there. I mean, but reality is we're providing for it. If it's going to happen, I think we're prepared for it. So I think we've worked hard on that issue.
Yeah. So we mentioned the biggest hurdle is the House. And we got 400 members there.
Right.
I mean, we've got a governor that supports it for the first time in a long time. Senate, as we heard.
First time ever.
Is that right, ever?
Wow. Well, I think Governor Shaheen had a conditional support, did she not? I think so. But this governor has made it part of her platform. Right. She campaigned on this issue.
Right.
And she stuck to her word. I mean, if you come from a community like Salem, I mean, you truly appreciate that. It's not easy. I mean, all of us go out there and say, why isn't a governor leading on this issue? Why isn't a governor leading on this issue? You know what? She's leading on this issue. She's putting her neck on the line for a cause I think that is right. I'm going to support her on that issue. I mean, we're not going to agree on everything. When I build the budget, I'm sure the governor and I will be in different rooms, you know, because it's just the way things happen in Concord. But right now, she's working hard at it, and I think she's going to work it in the House. You know what's going to work? This. Exactly what you're doing with this show. Right. People need to understand the legislation. You know, we'll go anywhere. I mean, and talk about it. Lou's been in Portsmouth. I actually spoke to a Concord chamber. I mean, the people want to know. Right. Even the naysayers want to know what you thought about when you built this. And I think it's important you keep doing this and talking about it. We need Derry's support. I mean, you have quite a few reps that could help us.
Right, right.
And we understand there's a couple who are on the fence and hopefully viewing this and maybe having the citizens call those representatives who are on the fence. Maybe we'll convince them that we are a representative government, and hopefully if they hear from the citizens in support, they will represent that desire.
Right, absolutely.
I'd like to point out that if the citizens do wish to contact the representatives on our website, which is derrylounge.com, we'll have links to all the representatives, right to both Senate, the House, all the representatives, period. And we'll also in particular have the Derry ones on our website, so you can click on it and send them an email if you'd like.
Great.
Yeah, so we got about 5 or 6 minutes. If we want to make some final points, that'd be great.
Well, I think the final point is this. This bill passed the Senate, has the support of the governor. It's now in the hands of the House of Representatives. It's up to, as Chuck said, it's up to us to answer the queries that people bring forward and to spread the word. And we're willing to go any place and talk to anybody about this issue. It's paramount. It's a key element to making the budget work, the budget for the next biennium work. And the more information people have about it, I think the better situated they will be to cast their vote. There'll be hearings in the House. I'm sure there'll be real hearings in the House. There may be many and varied, but the more information people have, the better the decisions that can be made. And we encourage people to ask questions, get answers. I mean, it's a piece of legislation that's been well thought out. It's been vetted in the Senate. Actually, this thing's been vetted for a decade.
Right.
So if people have questions, hopefully we'll provide all of the answers.
Excellent.
Well, I guess I will just, in case somebody's tuned in late, I just want to reassure the charities that they will be held harmless. They will be able to continue doing the deeds that they do, and I hope they understand that if there is any negative consequences to their economic well-being, that the casino will make sure they're held harmless.
All right.
I think we've made the point here today. This is a sustainable income source for the state of New Hampshire that's not tax dollars. And I really do think we need a strong debate in the House. We've never had that open and honest debate before, and we've never had the support of a governor. I think if we have that debate, we'll prove that this legislation can work for New Hampshire.
Right.
I guess I will add one thing.
Absolutely.
Having come from the House, having sat there as a state representative, I know I was disheartened when Ways and Means reconsidered 2 gaming bills that are totally separate and distinct from this. And what concerns me is that sometimes in the past, the House has said, well, we've taken up a gaming issue and we've already found it inexpedient to legislate.
Right.
It's an excuse. I hope that excuse is not used for Senate Bill 152. This is a separate, distinct bill. I hope it gets the full benefit of the hearing process. It gets an open discussion. It gets a fair discussion. And the votes are done based on your conscience without a, I guess, a politicizing the process.
Right. I believe a couple of bills, the competing bills, are up this week, either Wednesday or Thursday.
They come to the floor. They come
For the
to
House,
floor,
yeah.
right.
So I'm
But,
sure there'll be some debate about that as well. But
Well, exactly, and I just
Right.
hope the House
Right.
doesn't make
Keeps
that
it
well, we've already killed
a
2 gaming
barometer.
bills.
Right, exactly.
right. Right. Jim, do you have anything?
No, I'd just like to say that I want to thank you, Senators, for being on our show today. This is our first show, and we look forward to doing many more on this topic and other topics as well. We'll try to get some other key people that are involved in this to come to the show, and we want to thank you for being on our show today.
Yes, thank you very much.
Great.
We
You're welcome.
appreciate all the
Congratulations.
information.
You're
Thank you.
Yeah, all the best in your show.
Thank you.
And, yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And stay tuned for future shows. We'll bring some more great information to the people of Derry. So thank you very much for tuning in.